What is going on, everybody? STIPE here today, and today I'm going to be talking about the HELLCAT in particular, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the expenses and hidden costs, or I shouldn't say hidden costs, but costs that people don't really think about when they're buying a vehicle, and it could be just simply due to excitement, of course, and a few other factors, just typically things that people forget about when they're buying a vehicle in general. So that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be pretty much just a guidance on the best way to get into a HELLCAT. The HELLCAT has become increasingly popular vehicle for a lot of owners to buy. It's a very powerful and fast vehicle that's affordable, and I think that's what's making it more and more attractive to a lot of people. Not to mention the great looks of the Challenger and Charger help quite a bit. So we're going to get right into that video in just a second, but please, before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video at the end if you did like it. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button, but we're going to get right into the video in just a second. Okay, yes, as I was saying, the HELLCAT Challenger and Chargers. Now, when you're buying one, I've done a video on kind of how to buy one, what prices you can expect to negotiate off ones now, and a few other things on the HELLCAT when it comes to the topic in particular. I've even compared the Challenger and Charger HELLCATs. So if you want to see those videos, I'll try and put them at the end of this video so you guys can click on those links and see those videos in particular. I'm going to try and stay away from those topics, but I'm sure those topics will clash into this video in one. Hence the reason for this video. It's a little bit easier and a little bit shorter than watching a couple of other videos to get straight to the point of what I'm about to say in this one. So starting off, price. Yes, if you're in the US, obviously I am in Canada, but I am familiar with the US marketing as well, as far as when it comes to Chrysler and all of that, because I work for Chrysler, so I know and can expect to know what certain areas will be getting off their HELLCAT. So if you can get about $50,000 US for a HELLCAT, you're doing well. I've heard of stories where guys are now getting them under $50,000 US. That's great. Now, when I say that, that's used, of course. You can probably negotiate a new one close to $50,000 mark now. I'm sure if it's a year model old, like right now we're in 2019, in 2018 models, even maybe some 2017 models that are laying around, you could probably find, if they're brand new, for around that $50,000 mark. Now in Canada, if you're in Canada, you can probably find them for in the high 60s, mid 60s, brand new. I'm sure you can negotiate ones down to. I find in Canada there's less last year model years, I find, than the US does. I think maybe just because the US orders a heck of a lot more than in Canada they do, I find, and I think there's a bigger market when it comes to HELLCATs and SRT product in general. So that's just a kind of quick spiel on how much you can expect to negotiate off these cars. Now, when it comes to payments, you're probably going to be looking at about anywhere from $400 to $500 bi-weekly. You can do a monthly. If you're looking at a monthly, that's about $900 to $1,000 a month. And maybe let's say $850 a month is very achievable, even $800 a month. Now, this is financing numbers. If you are looking to lease, then any of the numbers I just said before, any of this to this portion mean absolutely nothing, because leasing is depending on what area you're in, can vary as well, what month you're in, because there's obviously different incentives from month to month, and that can play a huge variable factor. Now, I've heard of stupidly cheap prices for leasing a HELLCAT. I've heard almost $450 US a month, which makes me cry, because in Canada you can get nowhere near that number, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd probably own two of them. And I've heard of actually people who have shown me their bills of sales in the US who have actually successfully gotten Challengers, not Chargers. Unfortunately, typically I find the Chargers are a tad bit more expensive when it comes to leasing. It's maybe just because of a weaker residual. I don't know why that is, but yes, $450 a month I found some people got. Now, I'm probably, after this video, someone's gonna be like, I got $400-$350 a month, which will make me just cry even more. And no, but I think leasing wise, achievably, reasonably, is anywhere between $550 to $600 is probably a very reasonable and very good number. If you get anywhere under $700 a month leasing wise in the US, take it. don't say no. And I'm just telling you right now, a heads up. In Canada, unfortunately, you cannot lease them unless if you go through a private leasing company, which is possible as well. You can do that, but it's a little bit harder, a little bit more of a pain, and typically you're going to pay anyways the same amount that you would when you finance. Now, some people will be like, well, I can get rid of it at this term. Now, this is the thing about leasing. Yes, it's a lot cheaper. If you're very price oriented, then that's the way to go. But if you're a true car guy and you really want the car and you're going to want to do these mods, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, you're going to definitely not want to lease. And it's just because you're limited to modifications when you are leasing a vehicle, because they check the vehicle afterwards, and you got to remember they got to resell it. So something that's attractive to you may not be attractive to the next buyer. So if you like, you know, big fat 305s on the back, the next customer may not want 305s on the back. And I know that may seem silly to you, but it's true. And the reason why, it might not be even that they don't want 305s. The thing is right away, them seeing just 305 tires or an exhaust or an intake on the vehicle or a tune, all those things, people seeing it afterwards when they're buying it secondhand, they're like, well, this car got beat up on. It has nothing to do with the fact that that customer may not want those options. It has more to do with things start to run through your head. Well, why did he want 305s? Obviously, he raced it. Why are there, street radials on this car? Obviously, it was raced as well. So those are all things that kind of play a factor into how you can actually devalue your car from adding things. And a lot of people don't understand this. Even lowering kits, lift kits on trucks too. You can actually devalue your car by doing these things when from a dealership's perspective, because customers, when they come to us, it devalues to them. So it devalues to a dealer. So that's just a quick spiel on that there. Now, modifications. Yes, you're going to want wider tires on these Hellcats. Everybody always spends money on that. Exhaust. Best way to do it is a mid-muffler delete. If you want to talk about price-wise and cheapness, that's the best way to go. It sounds great. It's a little bit raspy here and there. There's no drone though. I've done it before on my Charger and it sounded incredible. And cold air intake. You have a Hellcat, you have that supercharger. It whines, don't get me wrong, but a lot of guys want it to whine even louder. So you're probably going to want to put a good cold air intake on there. And there's a little bit of more money. So, you know, with all those mods, you know, you could be, depending on what kind of tires you put in on the back, you could be spending, you know, $2,000 to $3,000. And that's just kind of my quick thing on modifications, what you can expect for as another cost that sometimes you forget about. You're going to want to probably do modifications to your car. Now, again, you can only do this if you're financing. And gas. Now, I know everyone's going to be like, well, if you bought this car, you shouldn't care about gas. Yes, you are right. But a lot of people, when they're looking to buy a Hellcat and they are price oriented, it kind of slips their mind because they're like, oh, I can afford the gas. I can afford the gas. You don't really realize it until you have the car as to whether or not you can afford the gas. Because here's the thing, you're probably reading on forums what guys are getting as gas mileage, and they're probably like, oh, I'm getting 21 miles per gallon, or, you know, 13 liters per 100, they're saying. And yes, that's achievable. That is definitely achievable. The thing is that it's very hard to hit those kinds of gas mileages. And there's going to be people who will comment on this video saying it's not. You have 707 horsepower. You're not going to get that kind of gas mileage. It's hard to do that when you're daily driving it even, and you get used to the power. You never get sick of the power. That's the thing. You will never get bored of 707 horsepower. That I can tell you for sure. And again, gas is just something that slips people's minds. If you're in, you know, if it's just a Sunday driver, this section doesn't really matter. But if you are planning on daily driving the vehicle, something to keep in mind. Another cost that people forget, if you are somewhere like me who lives in Canada and it snows a lot, you're going to have to pay for winter rims and winter tires. And when I say winter rims, you'll have to get HELLCAT replicas on top of that. You can't just get the cheapy steelies. Plus, even if you could, I don't think you'd want to cover those Brembo brakes, and it just wouldn't really suit a Hellcat with 707 horsepower. Now, it would make it look like more of a sleeper and a SXT. However, you can't do it, so that's out of the question. So you got to pay for HELLCAT replicas, 1. 2, you got to pay for winter tires now. And there's another, you know, $2,000 probably right there. And that's kind of just the hidden costs that a lot of people forget about. Another one is insurance. Insurance, though, on the Challengers and Chargers aren't that bad considering how much horsepower there is. They're not great, don't get me wrong, but they're actually not that bad comparably to, let's say, Mustangs and Camaros. They're actually a lot better than Mustangs and Camaros. Why? I don't know. Maybe just Mopar guys are a little more responsible than Mustang owners and Camaro owners, which would make sense because there's Mustangs crashing left, right, and center on the internet. Yes, you are now at the point of where, you know, should you buy this Hellcat or not? Maintenance costs and things like that. Maintenance costs and oil change, you know, depends where you get it. It can be anywhere from $70 to $120. That depends. Anything more than $120 is probably a little bit too pricey in my opinion. Why do they charge that? Now some people will be like, well, really, it's not really that hard to change the oil in a Hellcat motor. Yeah, it's not. The thing is one, they'll give you the excuse that it's full synthetic, which it is, don't get me wrong. But the thing that, you know, people don't understand, I don't know if you guys can hear that. That was a nice Hemi Ram that just fired up and it sounds really good. Anyways, thing that people overpass is when you're doing a Hellcat oil change and things like that, is dealers and places will just charge you more for an oil change simply due to the fact that it is a SRT product or a Hellcat, whatever you want to call it, just because of that reason alone. Not because it's harder, not because it takes more oil, not because it's a better oil or anything like that, because most people who own trucks and, you know, Jeeps and things like that anyways put full synthetic in their car, and it's a lot cheaper. So it's just a little bit of BS in my opinion when it comes to that you're pretty much just paying extra because of the kind of car you have. Now, brakes and maintenance, you have to remember brakes are not cheap on this car. You do have Brembo brakes and those 6 pistons, which do stop very nicely, but they're not cheap to replace. So make sure you do keep updated with your pads and rotors. The last thing you want to do is replace one of those calipers. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So that's another factor that you do have to pay attention to when you're thinking about this. Now owning a Hellcat, daily driving and all of that, can you do it? Yes. Do you want to go with a manual transmission like this Challenger has? Well, that's up to you. Do you want to go with a auto? That's up to you. Obviously the automatic is faster, and everyone's going to say, well, you can't buy a Challenger and not have a manual transmission. Here's the thing, you can buy a Hellcat and not have a manual transmission. And the reason why I say that is because the 707 horsepower with a manual transmission, you might as well just get a 392. You're not going to improve that much more with a manual transmission from a manual 392 to a Hellcat. It's very hard. You have to be a very good driver in order to do it. And again, I know there's going to be people who aren't going to agree with that, so whatever, screw them. You're not going to agree with me on that. That's fine. But trust me, as a person who drives them all the time between the two, really, you're going to have just as much as fun with a manual 392, and you're going to save a lot of money. That new wide body scat pack looks incredible. Get that in a stick. It handles around turns nicely now as well with those nice fat 305s, and you're going to enjoy yourself a whole lot. And that's another thing too. Yes, now there is a wide body package. In my opinion, stay away from it for now. Just because if you are costly effective, it's better not to spend that extra money and just find a used one or one that's been sitting on the lot for a bit that has a fleet side, I guess you would call it. I don't know what you would call it, or the old school look Challenger, not the wide body Challenger. Wide body Challengers are a little bit expensive in my opinion. They're a little bit high on the price, but not really when you think about what it compares to. Daily driving it, obviously the auto is probably the way to go with a Hellcat. In the Charger, obviously you can only get a automatic transmission. You cannot get a manual transmission, which is unfortunate. It would be cool to have a 4-door sedan in manual. However, you cannot do that. And the thing is, at the end of the day, guys, you can't make a bad purchase with going with a Hellcat in general, whether it's a Challenger or Charger. It is a head turner. I know from personal experience, no matter what color it is, everyone is always turning their head. It could be a black Charger that looks like a freaking cop car at nighttime. Doesn't matter. When you leave a light, everyone knows that that is definitely not a cop car. And I think a lot of people always used to go, when I had my Charger, it was all black, and people always used to be like, oh, I thought you were a cop for a second, this and that. I was like, yeah, I know, my car looks like a cop car. At nighttime, it kind of drove me nuts for a little bit, but then I liked it too because it was kind of a sleeper when you looked at it. And someone goes to me, oh, you're crazy, the Charger doesn't look like a sleeper at all. You're crazy because it is actually a sleeper. It's a 4-door sedan with 707 horsepower. How is that not a sleeper? And they go, oh, well, when you see the fat tires and the Brembo brakes, you know, it gives it away right away. Yeah, okay, yeah, the Brembo brakes and the rims and stuff give it away, but anybody could throw rims on any car. The Brembos do give it away, but at nighttime it is hard to tell what a Charger is, and I am favoriting the Charger a little bit here because it is unique. And a thing that I did get commented on one of my videos was the Challenger is a lot more popular and a lot more people want the Challenger, and that's all you see on the road. That's exactly quote for quote what I said in a video, and someone actually was very upset with that. And I was like, why the heck did you get upset with that? He goes, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. All I see is Chargers on the road, and all my friends want Chargers. Nobody wants a freaking Challenger. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. All my friends freaking want a Challenger. They want the 2-door coupe. They think it's cooler, and that's all I see people buying from us here. And I went down to Miami recently, last month, and yeah, you're right. Everybody drives a Charger in the U.S. and I didn't know that. A lot of more people, and even when I was in New York in the summertime last summer, yeah, there's a lot more Charger Scat Packs, HELLCATs, and things like that. I didn't know that in the U.S. it was that big of a popularity thing. Here in Canada, most people don't like the Chargers. They're like, I don't like the Charger. I want the Challenger. And it's weird because I've always liked the Charger, and that's why I like it, is because here everyone hates it. But in the U.S. it's a more common vehicle, and I think that's cool that it is. I think that the 4-door sedan does rock. That was something that I didn't know, and probably most of you didn't know about. So anyways, guys, that's my quick rant about the HELLCATs in general and what you can expect price-wise, what you can expect as owning one, just from talking to people and experiences. So please do make sure to hit that subscribe button. And like I always say, I'll be back with more videos. Thanks, guys.